Mani, it's a pleasure to have you here. Yes, so much. Of course, Supriya gave you some facts about Banyan Nation. Let me add a few more things. Definitely one of the stars when it comes to the circular economy startup landscape. Started over a decade ago. I guess it was a time when the category had to, in some sense, be created. And congratulations in some sense on being able to do that. Um, Now, Banyan Nation as an organization has been able to leverage innovation to drive both inclusion and sustainability. One of probably ticking off multiple boxes in that ESG mandate. And we look forward to hear from you on the challenges that you faced, and of course, a lot of advice that you definitely have for the upcoming climate tech entrepreneurs. So we'll dive right in.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Really honored and thrilled to be here. Maybe I'll give a 30-second or a 3-minute primer. I've been trained to do this by a lot of incubators and business schools. So we help brands use more recycled plastic instead of virgin plastic. That's what we do. And we have put over 2 billion bottles on the shelf using recycled plastics. That's over 200 crore bottles. The first 100 crore bottles took us 3 years. And when I say put bottles on the shelf, these bottles are your everyday shampoo bottles, lotion bottles, and whatnot. They were made from virgin polymers historically, because there was a deep fear that brands had that if virgin polymer were replaced by recycled polymer, there were going to be a lot of challenges in terms of pricing, in terms of material traceability, and in terms of the quality of the plastics as well. What we've done in the past 10 years is systemically built 3 solutions to help transition from a virgin linear economy to a recycled circular economy. The first innovation being a supply chain mapping digitization platform. And I don't want to overemphasize on digitization, Uberization, and marketplace. And I will expound on why I don't feel that's necessarily our key moat. But the point I want to highlight is India has a very unique informal value chain, and we've been able to leverage and harness the strengths of India's informal economy, particularly in plastic recycling. The second innovation that we are well recognized for is the polymer and plastic washing technology and cleaning technologies. The materials collected from the informal sector, which is the discarded plastics by us consumers, need to be cleaned and washed and restored to a condition where it's almost on par with virgin quality. Else what happens is it gets sold in a shadow economy that is used for low value applications for example, buckets, mugs, chairs, and benches, rather than putting a bottle back in bottle format. So the second pillar of innovation was the plastic washing and recycling technology. The third, in fact, I call it business innovation, and we had to work very hard in creating a policy framework, which is now called as the EPR, the Extended Producer Responsibility Policy Framework. We've worked with dozens of organizations in India, and we've helped the Indian government and various state governments and the Pollution Control Board come up with policy frameworks whereby brands today are mandated to use recycled plastic in their packaging. And if they don't use recycled plastic, they're going to be penalized. And historically, the context was that we at Banyan Nation had to urge, goad, motivate, and inspire brands to do the right thing. Today, the policy frameworks mandate that brands do it. If not, they'll face heavy risks or consequences like you were mentioning in the previous panel. So these are the 3 big areas that Banyan Nation has worked on in the last 10 years to be where it is today.
Great, wonderful. Great to see the impact, right? It's beyond just being a business, but impact even on a policy scale that you've been able to achieve. So let's go back like a decade ago when you just started. You just quit Apple, wanted to make a difference. What were those immediate challenges, especially if you look at running a Climatetech, a sustainability focused initiative. In just getting started, before we talk about scale, let's actually, start with the roots. What were those challenges that you initially faced?
I think entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs for a reason. And this is something a lot of friends, family, and even my peers in India ask me, what were the challenges you faced in the early stages? My mindset is one where I never saw this as a challenge in the first place, which is kind of interesting even for me personally. Back in 2008 to 2011, I actually worked for Qualcomm, not for Apple. And I was working on Apple product lines when I was in Qualcomm. But obviously, I was living my life in Apple because of the iPhone times. But taking a step back, I always wanted to solve fundamental problems that affected humanity at a very deep level, whether it is education or healthcare or waste management. And that was what inspired me to even go to business school, because my mentor and I had many mentors in Qualcomm, both on a personal front and on a professional front. And I was constantly pushing them to guide me in terms of how I can leverage my engineering skills to build something more meaningful. And during that phase, I really was lucky to get some great advice from my seniors who said that it appears that you have great engineering skills and you're able to inspire people, build products. But going to a business school and using the 2 years, not for becoming an investment banker or a management consultant, but actually using the business school for the purpose of building a business will really help you. So what I've done in 2011 and 2013 at Berkeley and Columbia was to use every single coursework, whether it is my operations course or whether it is my entrepreneurial finance or even classic accounting, to use the problem that I wanted to solve as the framework for every learning experience I had. And I was very lucky to meet one gentleman called Ron Gonin, who was my professor at Columbia. He was my teacher at Columbia. And he was then working with Mr. Bloomberg in helping the waste management of New York City. So Ron came to our class. We were in Dean Hubbard's class and on entrepreneurial finance, and he was the adjunct professor then. And then I was looking at waste management as one of the problems I wanted to solve. So Ron took me to a dozen waste management and recycling facilities in New York, and I've learned so many things about US and Europe and how fundamentally flawed they were. And I will share a few of my learnings there. And the first and foremost thing is that less than 10% of plastics were being recycled in the United States. On the surface, you see United States and Europe as being extremely clean. But on the inside, what was happening is that the cost of segregating polymers and plastics from the waste streams was so high that they would rather bury it in a landfill than recycle it. And when I contrasted that with my experiences in India, I realized that we as a culture fundamentally was so different that we would take our milk pouches, clean them up, and my mom would make me budget my entire month for the electricity bill, for the whatnot, in those milk pouches neatly labeled. My mom was this mathematics school teacher, of course, so she would do this kinds of stuff. And then how I used to steal the newspapers and cardboard and trade it for that 5 rupees to buy my cricket ball. So those immediately struck me. And then I realized that when you compare United States and in India, India had what I then thought as one of the greatest last mile collection system. So immediately it struck me as an opportunity and never as a problem in terms of sustainability for India, because it resonated with me as a cultural piece. So when I moved back to India in 2013, and of course, there's a lot of things I learned in the US in terms of technology, in terms of recycling machinery and so on and so forth. But I never wanted to plonk that technology into India and build a business. What I wanted to do is understand India for its own greatness and identify the gaps. So it never bothered me for one bit. Oh my God, this is going to be daunting, or people are not talking the sustainability jargon. So the first thing we did between 2013 to 2015 when we came back to India is used all this global experience and understood that the last mile gig economy in India, particularly the kirana stores or the kabadiwalas, and the kabadiwalas for the uninitiated are the last mile aggregators that you see at every street corner. So instead of being daunted by this informal and what people call as mafia, where all the materials are being collected, I immediately realized that 60% of all polymers and plastics and cloth and metal in India was being recovered and recycled. And then I immediately saw that as an opportunity. And I was also inspired by India's milk revolution. Back in the 1970s, India was a milk deficit nation. But by the time we came to 1990s, India had become the leading exporter and producer of milk. And the way we did it was not by copying the West, whereby we built 1,000-acre farm with 100,000 cows and buffaloes, right? We said, let the small milk farmer do his thing. We build a layer on top, which is the milk cooperative model. We ensure that the milk that is coming in is of high quality. Then we do the milk, yogurt, ice cream, cheese layering on top, thereby pulling the entire economy up. So these examples were all there in my mind. So the first 3 years was spent between 2013 and 2016 in mapping the kabadiwalas, understanding India's waste flows, identifying how India's informal sector was already doing a fantastic job. And rather than Uberize the kabadiwalas, and I felt that fundamentally you can't Uberize the kabadiwalas, you have to cooperatize them. We basically really got excited, thrilled, and embraced this whole traditional Indian sustainability culture and mindset and the frameworks. So it was always something that I felt confident, secure about in terms of how India had probably the greatest foundation to launch a sustainable economy. I always believed in that. Yeah.
No, interesting. I mean, different inspirations, a variety of, ideas,
Yeah.
cultures, and of course, people that actually come together to, make a successful startup. That's very interesting. Uh, then and now, because especially, I mean, you are definitely working with a lot of corporates now. We've had a panel that spoke about it. How do you think things have changed over the last 10 years, versus when you started and now?
Yeah. I take the responsibility of evangelization and education very seriously, whether it is investors, customers, or even my own teams. I think the role of an entrepreneur is, if you start with investors in the beginning also, I had to do a lot of evangelization and education with investors because I had a very holistic and healthy outlook towards investors. I was never servile or I was never looking up on them because I could have been on the other side of the desk quite easily, having gone to Columbia Business School. So when I first started Banyan Nation between 2013 and 2016, we faced a lot of criticism from investors very early on in terms of what exactly is your business model, how are you going to survive, and the fear that they were operating in was of the mafia-driven informal sector. That fear pervaded not just in the investment ecosystem, but also it pervaded in the brand and the corporate ecosystem as well. So between 2013 and 2016, when we had raised our initial seed round, by the way, I want to share one thing, right? We raised, I'd raised a bunch of seed money while I was in my business school. A lot of my friends said, if at all you're going to do anything, here is my $25,000. So I had about 10 of these $25,000 checks, a line that I never drew upon. I drew upon 3. One was my brother, one my sister, and the other one is my friend Gokul, who is also an Apple and who lives here in Bangalore now. So I drew on those 3 $25,000 checks. Within 1 year, once we'd built the Kabadiwala network, Then we raised about $800,000 in seed funding from a gentleman in Connecticut. And he kind of understood where I was going with this. And then IIM Ahmedabad, they invested in us very early on in 2016, when everybody's like, what exactly is it that you're building? So I thought I'll thank you for that. So between 2016 and 2019, if the first phase was working with the kabadiwalas, bhandiwalas, and raddiwalas in bringing the plastics in, segregating them, identifying the problem statement. So we've spent 3 years in, first of all, focusing on the problem statement. And again, given the paucity of time, I'm not going to expound on all that. The problem statement, as far as what I saw, was India did not have a collection segregation problem. Metal, paper, plastic, everything was being collected. Water bottles, in fact, had 90% recycling rate. So we don't do PET water bottle recycling. For the past 30 years, all our polyester, fiber, yarn industry is already being fueled by PET. So I was very clear that I was not solving a problem in PET. So I was looking for a problem that was worth the investors' money and my own time. So that was my journey between 2013 to 2016, and Raj's journey, my co-founder's journey. And what we found out, I hope this is all not boring for you guys, but I like to geek out on polymers. So polyethylene and polypropylene, because all plastics is not the same, right? I mean, we are talking about 20 million tons of plastics being created every year. So polyethylene and polypropylene are the most versatile materials that man has ever created. You can make an automotive bumper, you can make a milk pouch, you can make a shampoo bottle, and you can also make AC covers and aeroplane components. So as an entrepreneur, you first need to understand what exactly are you solving. So these materials, because of their versatility, were being mixed up by the informal sector and being downgraded. So India was losing 10 million tons of material value because these materials were being downcycled in spite of the collection. So that piqued my interest. And I said, I was going to take this 10 million tons, which is a $10 billion market opportunity, and build the frameworks of supply chain, segregation, recycling, and washing technologies, and brand evangelization over a period of 6 to 7 years, and build a company that can go from 0 to 100, let's say in 10 years, 100 to 1,000 in 5 years, and 1,000 to 10,000 in 3 years. So we are at 0 to 100 now. And 2016 to 2019 was brand evangelization and education. So we went to these brands and we said, your bottles actually can be made from recycled plastic. And we got kicked out, obviously. So I used to go with my suit, and I used to put my suit, and I was like rolling up my sleeves to give them this amazing presentation. And they're like, how many more bottles can you help me sell with yours? What are you selling me? I'm like, I'm not selling you anything. I'm trying to tell you that this is the right thing to do. I'm like, I don't need another Sadhguru, get out of here, right? So we had a lot of these meetings in the beginning. But for me, I didn't care. I think my conviction also was very, very strong. But cut to the chase, Tata Motors gave us the opportunity in 2017 to take bumpers, recycle. That's why industry partnerships are very important. We became the first company to do a bumper-to-bumper recycling. We took, bumper is made from polypropylene. The paint on the bumper is very difficult to remove. So we developed a bumper-to-bumper recycling mechanism. Actually, we borrowed heavily from Toyota. I met the chairman of Toyota in Chennai in a conference that's called WBCSD. And the chairman of Toyota was so kind to me. I mean, you wouldn't believe. I mean, this is the chairman of Toyota. And he was sitting next to me. And he asked me, what problem are you solving, young man? And I said, I'm trying to recycle auto bumpers, and I find the paint removal to be a challenge. And he said, what all technologies are you trying? And then I told him how chemical baths and friction washes are going to do this. And I was telling him all this. We were both geeking out in a corner. And he said, did you try the rice dehusking method? And I'm like, what do you mean? So when you take rice and then you rub rice against each other, the one with the husk, the friction itself removes the husk. Did you know that? And then I said, yeah, I read a paper on it, but it can basically destroy the polymer properties. So he said, you need to combine both the chemical and the rice dehusking techniques. And so a chance meeting with him allowed me and Raj to look at the papers on this topic, and we cracked that. And that was what resulted in us getting the World Economic Forum Award in Davos in 2018. Then Unilever gave us a chance. Then L'Oreal gave us a chance. So, I mean, you have to be patient as an entrepreneur to build something meaningful and something deep. And I think I've been very kind to have the team with me who's also equally crazy or stupid, whatever you want to call it. Investors were very patient. I mean, IIM Ahmedabad has been one of the most patient investors. Never once have they called and harangued us for like, hey, what's going on? Like, right? So, yeah. So today, I think, and it's not like they've always been tracking us. Today, obviously, after we've raised our Series B last year, we're at a fairly secure position. But anyways, I don't think I'm adding any value. I'm just like meandering and giving you these stories. I don't know if this is what you guys want from me, but yeah.
Yeah. Let me actually come back to the investors, but there are investors who are very much focused on climate sustainability, and there are investors who are more commercial in nature, right? How has your experience been? Because now that you're looking to scale up, you've raised a Series B and all that. Is there a difference in their approach? And I mean, if you're, for example, managing both, I mean, how easy or difficult is it?
Yeah, I've been a bit weird in that aspect as well. I actually don't look at investors in that perspective, in that sense. The last Series B round, we raised about 30 million last year. And I think everybody is giving me a hard time for not publishing that in your story and this and that. Because I'm like, yeah, I don't have money. So I raised money to build a new factory. If organically I was raising money. So my perspective on investment was being a bit different. So just coming to the point, the last round that I have raised was not from a climate-centric fund, even though I've been speaking to everybody. I've raised money from one of India's largest microfinance institution. It's called Credit Access Grameen. It's owned by a group of people called Asia Impact. And the reason I raised money from Asia, and obviously a lot of corporates, all the petrochemical companies want to work with us because like you mentioned, petrochemical companies see recycled plastic as the next frontier because they produce virgin polymer. And obviously, petrochemical companies want to hedge their bets. So if the demand for virgin polymer comes down, they want to be plugged into Banyan Nation's ecosystem because they can sell recycled granules at a premium, right? So I understand the corporate strategy and I totally appreciate it, right? So Petronas, the Malaysian energy company, is an investor in Banyan Nation. We had Total, the French energy company, also invest in Banyan Nation. So these were all my previous Series A rounds and so on and so forth. But more recently, we've had offers from some of the largest FMCG companies, product companies, climate funds, but I've taken money from a microfinance institution, and I'll explain to you the rationale here. We fundamentally believe that India's plastic recycling problem can be solved by leveraging and harnessing the informal value chain. Because the technologies to clean the plastic, put the plastic back into products and packaging, I think they're fairly mature in the last 10 years, like Alok was mentioning. Where I see value is, how do you take the informal kabadiwala network, for example, and pull them out of the shadow economy? And that is where I see the maximum value, right? And I'll give you my rationale here. I've explained the milk cooperative model. right? Today, you don't wake up in the morning and say, where's my milk is going to come from? Is the guy with the cow or buffalo going to come? Because that was my duty when I was like a 5-year-old in my village. I was born near Vizag. So my grandmother used to wake me up because I had to monitor, because if that guy is going to put water in the milk or not, right? So the same thing, and I am very fascinated with the milk economy. I'm very fascinated with the Kirana store economy in India, because India has been successful largely by leveraging the informal economy and not displacing the informal economy. So I'll give you some statistics. In every city in India, for every square kilometer, there are 4 kabadiwalas. And the reason for that is roughly for every square kilometer, there are 1,000 homes, which means that for every 250 homes, there's one dedicated kabadiwala. And this is across Nagpur, Bangalore, Chennai, Bombay, Delhi, Gurgaon, wherever you take. So the informal sector is ubiquitous, it is extensive, and it is intricate. So even if you go to a place called like Jasguda in Orissa or some place in Kerala, you'll still find a kabadiwala there. So what I felt was, if we can take investors who have already played in these informal markets and gig economies and know how to finance them. What does a kabadiwala need, right? Some amount of money to buy the scrap from in the morning and then rotate the capital. That's all he needs. And if you can empower them by giving them some sort of machinery, and why does an informal sector guy get a loan? Because Banyan Nation is committed to buying 5,000 tons from them on a monthly basis. So banks can use the strength of my balance sheet to actually fund the informal sector guy and build the cooperative model. So these are the kinds of new age innovations I'm very excited about. And that's what to me feels very relevant and pertinent when you scale this from 100 to 1,000 crores, 1,000 to 10,000 crores, and taking the company from India to Africa to Latin America to Egypt or to Indonesia. Because if you take North America and Europe and Australia out, maybe now China increasingly, maybe a little bit Japan out, the rest of the world is like this. So I can't use the American model to build a solution in India. It's like extremely illogical for me. So that's why I pick and choose investors whose strengths can really impact the industry at large. And I think that's where their patience also comes, because of their knowledge in these systems. So, yeah.
No, interesting. I mean, choose the investors as per the vision that you have.
Yeah.
I think that definitely makes sense. I mean, I think we are running out of time. Probably we can just take a couple of questions.
Hi, I'm Rohini here. I just had a question about the recycling of plastics that you told about. So there are some assumptions that I've heard, and I just wanted to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah.
So I've heard that when plastic is recycled, you need to add a bit of virgin plastic to it to make it as strong or
I said that?
good quality. No. I have heard it elsewhere. So
Yeah.
I want to know if that is true.
Okay.
How does that work? And when it is recycled, is it possible to recycle it once again after the first round? So those are a few of my questions.
Yeah, if I become academic, then this is going to take half an hour, but let me try. No, it's a good question. Polymers fundamentally is carbon chains linked to each other, both on linear and on cross-chain linkages. It's very simple, right? Think of carbon as chains, like the armor chain mall, right? It's just polymer chains, right? Linear layers of polymer chains. Whenever you take plastics and take them through a heat cycle. So let's say you take virgin plastic from Reliance and make a shampoo bottle. Already the heat cycle weakens the linkages. Now you take the shampoo bottle, you wash it, grind it, melt it, filter it, and make granules again. It weakens it further. So fundamentally, polymers, whenever taken through heat cycles, will become weak in the bond. So this is pure chemistry and physics. Now, can you restore it back to original virgin form? No, you cannot. So what does Banyan Nation propose? We tell the marketing and branding guys, and I'm going to normally tell the companies that marketing people tell me, भाई अगर 100% recycled plastic market में नहीं रखोगे तो ये बिकेगा नहीं, right? They'll tell you this in Amitabh Bachchan tone. I'm like, I think you need to teach Amitabh Bachchan chemistry and physics also, because 100% recycled bottles will fundamentally continue to weaken, right? So how does true circularity work? So true circularity works by finding that sweet spot of virgin to recycled plastic mix in a bottle that can allow you to keep this going in perpetuity. So can you make a bottle made from 100% recycled plastic? Yes. Can you make it by the methodology that I described? No, you have to make it, add some virgin polymer to it. Chemical recycling is a technology. I know 3 people are sleeping in this. So mechanical recycling and chemical recycling are 2 technologies. Mechanical is where you just melt the plastic, filter it, and you make granules. Chemical recycling is where you completely depolymerize it, make it into hydrocarbon individual materials, and then repolymerize it like it is virgin polymer, right? But that has a high energy cost, and so there are other consequences to it. So the short answer to your question is, mechanical recycling should be used in about 70% recycled, 30% virgin. It's my take on it. Some people can say 80-20 or 60-40. Chemical recycling can be made into 100% virgin polymer, but it has a very high energy cost. We'll take this offline. Yeah.
Hi, Mani.
Hey.
I really appreciated your story about building Banyan Nation and being patient and tenacious while taking climate action. So purely from a business development perspective, I just want to understand, since you've recently gone through Series B, so you must have big ambitions for taking your company in the future as well. So my question is, what is the most optimistic future you envision for Banyan Nation and for India's plastic and recycling future as a whole?
The use of recycled plastic has to be a norm, not a novelty. Meaning that you can't convert recycled plastic usage into some sort of marketing stunt where you say, oh, I've collected like 5 tons of recycled plastic from a beach cleanup and made them into cool sunglasses and a surfboard. And let's geek out on this shit and sell this for like 500x the price. I mean, that sort of stuff is not going to solve the plastic problem. Plastic problem can be solved only when discarded materials are recovered purposefully and reintegrated back into mainstream manufacturing streams. I mean, that's the foundation. I am insanely optimistic. In fact, I'm so optimistic that I just lectured my team just before coming in about a regulatory framework India had. And I'll tell you, India's extended producer responsibility regulation is fantastic. The regulation says that, and it has been implemented for 3 years now, companies must collect what they have used as plastic raw material. Companies must also show that they have recycled a portion of what they have collected. And this has been enforced for 3 to 4 years. Next year, companies must use that recycled plastic in a certain percentage back on their packaging, right? Now, with this kind of progressive policy, what it does is companies are being held responsible for not only using plastics as a packaging material, but also responsibly managing the end of life and recovery as well. So next year onwards, just to give you a sense, 30% of all packaging materials made in rigid format has to be used back as packaging material again, recycled plastic. The demand for recycled resins just in polypropylene and polyethylene is 1 million tons. And in PET water bottles, it is 800,000 tons. So that's 1.8 million tons of recycled plastic demand just in next year. And in the last 7 years, we've seen over $800 million being invested in infrastructure and plastic recycling in India. You guys can go to this website called the Circulate Initiative. It's a really good website. And there's a company called Circulate Capital that invests in the plastics recycling companies. They've done this. You can understand how much of investor interest has grown in this space only because of the regulation and the regulatory framework. So for Banyan Nation, we are envisaging a 5x expansion. So we are putting out about 12,000 tons of recycled plastic to brands. By 2025 year end, we will be at 50 to 55,000 tons. So that's what we are working on. And that's not enough. And as I said, in 6 years, we want to be at 100,000 tons. Still a drop in the ocean, but it's massive.
Yeah, I think we're out of time. We'll probably take the questions off.
Oh, yeah, sure.
One more question. Yes, please.
So excellent stuff, Mani. Congratulations. And, as you get more successful and as recycled plastic use increases, what do you think your competitors like Reliance, who produce virgin plastic, should do with the virgin plastic they're producing?
Wow, it's a loaded question. There's something called the Global Plastics Pact that is currently happening around the world. All the countries are meeting to discuss precisely the question you're asking. The recent meeting concluded in Ottawa in April, and they're meeting for the final time in Korea. The question you're asking is, as the capacity for recycled polymer and the quality of recycled polymer also increases, shouldn't there be curbs on the production of virgin polymer? I guess there's a lot of international dynamics at play here. Because if you think about it, the developing economies are saying that the developed economies have had their day in the sunlight for the last 50 years by producing a huge amount of virgin polymer and also exporting them to all the developing countries, and they've made immense amount of money doing that. When countries like India today are finding their feet and their demand and their own growth stories, putting a curb on virgin polymer production can be detrimental to the larger growth story of India at large, right? So it's a very complex and loaded question. And it has to be taken with a certain nuance of the development as well. My personal take on this is that companies like Reliance, in fact, have started building up their own infrastructure in recycling as well. They're one of the largest players in PET recycling. And they're very interested in companies like Banyan Nation because of the polyolefin, PPPE story as well. So as I mentioned earlier, all petrochemical companies in India and globally have been talking to Banyan Nation and other recyclers as well, because they're trying to balance out not only the volumes, but also there is a certain price premium that you're going to be getting for recycled resins as well. So they are playing this strategically and smartly, but it's a great and a complex question that I think we should discuss offline over a cup of coffee, I guess. Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mani.